Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Now, do you know what this is? It's okay if you don't. If you've watched this channel a million times, you might have some idea. This is the very forward end of the Titanic. This is about as far forward as you can go. And it's a very special view. This is the little hole, I guess. People call it the eye of the Titanic. This little hole that's at the very front of the ship, just below where Jack and Rose do their thing. And I was playing Titanic Honor and Glory the other day, Demo 401, walking around the ship, and I saw this and I thought, gee, not many people must have got to see this in the ship's very brief career, right? Not many people even know this area exists. I mean, what is this thing? What is that thing? What does all this stuff do? Look, we all know the really beautiful rooms on the Titanic, the ones they always print in the books, like the Grand Staircase and the lounge and the dining saloon, all these really nice places. But Titanic was a huge thing. It was like 50,000 tons of steel with a lot of nooks and crannies that you wouldn't have got to see if you were a passenger. And even if you were a crew member, very, very few people would have seen them. And unfortunately, some of them now are just lost to time. So today, why don't we run through and let me show you some of the lesser known mystery rooms aboard the Titanic. Let's go have a look. We are going to start in here. This is probably one of my favorite spaces on the ship. This is absolutely jammed full of equipment. I'm going to put up a little map to show you exactly where we're standing with a little red dot. And basically, this is a room purely dedicated to handling all of Titanic's really heavy mooring machinery, all the stuff that you would use to tie the ship up alongside a wharf, to handle the anchors and all that kind of thing. So directly above us is the very top deck, the forecastle deck. And this is absolutely crammed full of steam engines that do all different things. To help you get your bearings a little bit, where we're standing right now, on the other side of this plating here, is the Titanic's name. It literally says Titanic in between these two things. You can see a little pipe right there. You can see another one right there. And if we go up and stand next to them, we can just look straight out. There's no glass there, it's just a hole. This is called a mooring pipe, and essentially these were used to run heavy lines in from the dock and rig them to all these pieces of machinery here. Typically, these bad boys right here, bollards or bits. And basically this helped secure the ship against the dock. There were quite a few more of these on the deck above, but for whatever reason, if you needed more, you could come down here and use them. Now this entire forward compartment, as I mentioned, is full of crucial stuff. So there's a couple of really big gears right here that connect to a pair of steam engines that drive these bad boys, one on either side, left here, right over there. And these are the main capstans. And so these are the big heavy pieces of machinery that are designed to wind in Titanic's anchor chain. And the anchor chain itself, you can see, would have been stored in the locker right beneath our feet, all the way down. Again, this is like really, really far forward on the ship. And you can see this big pipe right here would have led the anchor's chain up and through to the capstans above us. But the capstans themselves were powered by the steam engine right here. Pretty cool, right? This room hasn't been seen again since 1912. It's kind of entombed within the ship, and unfortunately, no one's been there again. For whatever reason, they've been close, but presumably it's gated off. See here, there's a big gate. I think that's shut on the wreck. I've never seen any photographs or footage from in here. There's also really no photographs of this space. You know, Titanic was around for a very short period of time. So, you know, we have to rely on plans and other ships in order to figure out what this area looked like. And fortunately, you know, this hasn't changed a lot. You know, ships still have these rooms. The Queen Mary 2, I went on a tour and she's got one that looks exactly like this, just about. HMS Belfast in the Thames in London also looks exactly like this. So there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of stuff. Here we've got thermotanks that are designed to heat the air. So you can see that there's actually, go around the side here, you can see the electric motor that was there to draw in fresh air from above and heat it in these little steam tanks and then circulate it through the ship to warm the air up. We've also got some more steam engines back here, which were designed to run the other big capstans that were around the ship. And so on the forecastle deck, you can see directly above here, there would have been a set of capstans and they're geared to these steam engines. which themselves are supplied steam through the main lines. So you can see all these pipes would have fed the steam from the ship's boilers to these little engines. And if we go all the way up to the front of the ship, as far forward as you can get, you see the deck drops down a little bit, so drop, and you get this thing. This is a big cable reel, and so Titanic had a central anchor, and the central anchor wasn't fed a chain, it was fed a big thick cable, or as they called it back then, steel rope. And you can see the steel rope is kept on here, and it goes all the way out here. There's a little roller, and then it disappears out of the very front of the ship. Now, this huge steel cable could be used to even tow Titanic, which is quite useful. But in this instance, it's been deployed. It could be used for like the central anchor. It could be used for towing, all these different things. What we're seeing right here is the base of the anchor crane. So Titanic had this big crane that sat directly above it. This is the very bottom of it. And you can see that this terminates on the deck here to support it. And this crane could have revolved in place, and it was used to pick up the ship's central anchor, twist over to the side, and drop it. Now on the starboard side, or the right-hand side of the room, there's a little hatch, as you can see, with room inside. So this is another one of those really weird little spaces that we'll check. This isn't actually one I was going to include, but we'll put it in anyway. They were trying to cram in basically as much storage as they could, because you've got all this like empty space. And if you go on the Queen Mary, actually, you can go and see rooms and compartments just like this. They're all steel, they're all bare bones. You can actually see the ship's hull and all the rivets and everything, but they're all used for storage of stuff. What's really cool about this one is because we're so far at the front of the ship where it really narrows out, you can see the anchor pipes right here. This is basically where the stock of the anchor would have sat when it was hard up against the ship's side when it was brought in. Pretty clever. This room, never photographed, hasn't been explored on the wreck, still exists, but presumably is covered in silt and debris and is trapped within the wreck and will probably never be seen again. So it's very cool that Titanic Honor and Glory gives us the opportunity to see some of these spaces. Space number 2 is the number 1 cargo hatch. So you can see we have a nice sunny sky and a beautiful clear view. This would have been covered with a hatch when the ship was at sea on its voyage. So there was a big solid hatch that would sit on top of this and be secured in place, keep everything nice and watertight. And as you can see, there's the room we were just in, the mooring equipment handling room, and I hope you're not afraid of heights like I am, because if you stand on this grating and look straight down, you will see I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving it in. I'm not going to cut that. I'm tempted. We just fell down the number 1 cargo hatch and broke our legs. That's how deep Titanic's cargo handling areas are. And believe it or not, there is still more ship beneath our feet that we'll go and check out in a minute. So what's going on here? Well, this is, as promised, a big empty shaft where they would just lower cargo in when they were, boarding the ship at Southampton or, as intended, New York. And it would all be secured down here. So this is one of the forward cargo compartments. You can actually see, to protect the sides of the ship and protect the cargo itself, they had these wooden boards that were put up. This is all pretty standard stuff. Ships from history have kind of looked just like this. And again, if you go on the Queen Mary, you'll see spaces that look very, very similar to this. But, it's a long way down. And again, this is one of those hidden spaces. You can see it on the plans. You can see that there's a cargo hatch, but someone would have stood down here and guided cargo as it was coming down. This was a view somebody had back in 1912 that hasn't been seen since then. Anyway, I'm going to go back up and we can talk about it some more. See, we're now on G deck, and you can see that, it's a long way up. And so there are these 2 circular staircases which go all the way down into the base of the ship. And we're going to follow these up for a minute, because these would have been used by the crew. They were used by the firemen traditionally. You can see that they were marked this way up, this one over here, this way down. And I'll explain what these are. You can see over here, there is a small kind of quiet area with lots of bunks. So these were the firemen's berths. This is where the men who would tend to the boilers, trim the coal, all that kind of thing. And this is where they would have stayed. They would have done what we now call hot bunking. Back then it was pretty common for working men to do. And so you can see there's just long cots. It's as basic and simple as possible. The little compartments aren't even separated. Like the bulkheads here don't even go up to the roof, the deck head above it. But at least they've got, portholes for natural light. So the firemen would have lived around this entire area, and their whole lives revolve around this set of stairs. So let's say we've just woken up, we're a fireman, and we want to go and get some breakfast before we start our shift. Here's what we do. So we wake up, maybe do a bit of reading, have some coffee, and then we will trudge up the staircase. That one goes up. We're going to go up here. We're going to go up to E deck, the deck above, and we'll keep going to D deck. We want to go all the way up to C deck at the top. Here's the D deck landing, and then we're going to go up here to C deck, because this is where we're going to get our breakfast. There is in here at the top the kitchen. This is another forgotten space, another little secret area on Titanic that hasn't been seen since 1912. So this little galley was essentially a crewman's galley. There were ones just like this for the firemen, for all different members of the crew. And yeah, this is where they cooked. And you can see that there is quite a bit of natural light coming in through a lot of these portholes. There's also a nice big skylight. Now, the skylight is still visible on the wreck, which is good. That's still there. And that was there to let all the hot air escape, all the cooking fumes, all that kind of thing. And originally, there were way fewer portholes here as well, but they cut more in on Titanic when they realized on Olympic that they needed more, presumably. They needed more fresh air, they needed more light. And who can blame them, working over like a hot coal stove, right? So we've got some bread in the oven by the looks of it. Is that bread? Yeah, yum. We've got soup on the boil, what they would have been serving back then, all that kind of really carb-heavy stuff to help these guys do these very, very long jobs. By this point, a lot of the mixing and a lot of the peeling and things like that had been motorized. So you can see here, there's like piles of potatoes next to this machine, which has an electric motor and a chain drive. So a lot of this stuff didn't need to be done by hand anymore, which is really cool. But if we go into the next compartment forward, that is facing towards the very front of the ship. That is facing backwards. If we go past the stairs and come in here, we're going to find the mess. So this is where meals would be served for these members of the crew. It's a small, granted, comfortable space. Not exactly elaborate and ornate like first class or second class, but you would have taken your meals and you would have got full up because you're about to do a big day's work. So we've just eaten and we've filled our bellies. Now we're ready to start the day properly. We're going to come out here just in front of the number 1 cargo hatch and go back to that staircase, and we're going to go all the way down. Ooh, this is the way up. Sorry. So we'll go back around the right way. This way down. There we go. Have to follow the rules. And we will go around here. And we're going to go all the way down to the bottom of the ship. Now, these fireman stairs were really important because they obviously allowed these men to go up and down in their working shifts. That's why they needed 2 sets of stairs, one going up, one going down. Because we'd be going and starting a big day of work, you can see that there was a series of drink fountains that were placed around here with running water so that we could get a drink. And these aren't really marked on the plans. This is something that James Cameron and his team found on the wreck. I think it was in 2001 for the Ghost of the Abyss expeditions, but Thomas Andrews and his design team put these around for the firemen before they started work so that they could hydrate before going down into the boiler rooms, because it got pretty hot down there, but we'll be there in a minute. So it opens up into this absolutely cavernous, amazing cavernous space. So it's pretty remarkable when you think that there, even from up here, you can see the bottom of the cargo hatch here, right? And all the way up there is the daylight. Well, just down here, we enter the netherworld. We enter the real belly of the ship. And what's really interesting is when Titanic struck the berg, there was reports of water cascading down around around here, which is quite a creepy thing to think about. It was animated by the Titanic Honor and Glory guys. So if we go all the way down here, we are now at the very bottom of the ship, which leads us to our next cool hidden area. First of all, this space, again, you can see it on plans and it doesn't really look that impressive, but if you actually come down here and stand down here at the bottom of the ship, it's pretty cool. If we look backwards, you will see the Fireman's Tunnel. Aptly named because it do look like a tunnel. So this was essentially a space that led directly into the boiler rooms, and the reason it was done this way is because the crew needed a really simple way of getting up and down and then going to work, right? So having this tunnel means it bisects, all these other spaces like cargo hatches and tanks and all this kind of stuff. But it means that they are given really just a very simple way to get to and from work, go up and get something to eat and sleep and then go back and do it again, right? So we're going to go to work. This is the way men would be going to work. On the other side of this little barrier, men coming from work. So we'll go to work. We'll walk along the tunnel. In fact, we'll run along the tunnel until we get to this little space. Now we are beginning to enter the boiler rooms. And as you can see, there is the first watertight door that we've come across. Now, this watertight door is special because it's one of the electric watertight doors. So this was activated from the bridge and it dropped down from above, closed like this. There are other watertight doors throughout the ship that close sideways, but this is one of the ones that probably everyone thinks about when they think of watertight door because they've seen it in the film. It also had a float mechanism. So over here, there's a really basic little system so that if a float was picked up by any water and lifted up, it would trip the watertight door manually and close it. It's quite a clever feature. But we're going to now go into one of these areas, which is a very famous part of the ship, one of the boiler rooms. We're now down at boiler room number 6. So this is the forwardmost boiler room. So basically to get to work, there would be men working around us shoveling coal in to get to where we need to go, because if we work in boiler room 5, we have to go and find a gap in between the boilers to walk through. And what do you know? There's one right there. So you would literally walk through these hot burning boilers just to get to work. Now, one thing that Titanic was rather good for as a new ocean liner, she was part of this new generation of liner that had come about in the 1910s that provided more artificial ventilation. So, in the years before Titanic, firemen and men working on the boilers had to rely on typically, like big shafts and things to allow the hot air to rise. But these spaces would get blisteringly hot, like 50 something Celsius, 60 Celsius, 120 plus degrees Fahrenheit. Not where you want to be for a long period of time. So they realized that there had to be, better ventilation to make sure, first of all, these fires are, the furnaces are burning more efficiently, but also to make sure that our firemen aren't passing out, that kind of thing. So Titanic was given a lot of forced ventilation, a lot of electronic fans and things like that to draw fresh air from all the way up above and bring it down here. So I'll show you something really interesting. If we pop down and have a look in here, we can actually enter one of the coal bunkers. So you can see here there's a little door which could slide up or down. If we were working this boiler furnace right here, for example, we would be shoveling coal from there, putting it in there and just keeping our eye on the flame. But you can see that if we go in here, you can actually get inside the coal bunker, which is really cool. These ladders would have led up to the top and we would have been able to walk across the top of the bunker. You can see how big a space this is. If we walk down here, you can see that these bunkers are really, really big. And so this one is actually kind of empty for the time being. But you can see there are these little lamps. Men would have been working down here, the trimmers, to make sure that there was coal evenly distributed and it wasn't just going down on one side, because that could cause the ship to lean over. So we'll pop back down and come back into the boiler room. So this is the side of the ship, and that's it. There's no second skin. That's literally the water on the other side of this steel. And this is one of the things that undid the Titanic, right? Is that beneath us, there's about 6 feet of double bottom. But to the side of the ship, there ain't a whole lot. So this is basically exactly where the iceberg damage would have occurred. So you can imagine there would have been men working these furnaces. They would have heard this bumping, rumbling sound and looked up, and they would have seen these rivets just sheared off and water start pouring in. And so naturally, people are going to think, well, how would they get out of the boiler rooms? We're all the way at the bottom of the ship, right? Well, there are these doorways here that we immediately think of people running through with the watertight doors. We've all seen in the movies where the watertight doors slowly start going down, and men are rushing to jump through and get out. But there is actually kind of an easier way of getting out, so you don't have to try and beat the door, which will lead us to one of the really interesting hidden spaces aboard Titanic. So these ladders, they go up and away from the boiler room, and they keep going up, and they go up and up and up and up until you get basically to the top of the ship. So let me show you. We're now standing on top of the gratings here. You can see the big main steam lines that would have supplied steam from the boilers back to the engines. And if we keep going up, eventually we will be able to get out of this space entirely. These are the big boilers. And you can see here these huge black pipe-looking things. These are the uptakes that would have fed all that smoke and all that gas and everything coming out of the boiler furnaces up to the funnels. So we're going to follow them up. So the water's flooding in beneath us. Don't worry though, because we will be able to get out just fine. We go up to this level. And now we're really at the top of the boiler room. Again, hope not afraid of heights because it's only going to get worse. A really cool space. This hasn't been photographed on Titanic or any of her sisters, I don't think, but there are photographs of these big uptakes. These, you can see them slanting up into up here where the base of the funnel is. This is what's funneling all that gas and all that smoke out of the ship, and you can literally walk on top of them and follow them out, which is really cool. So if we go up here, you can see a pipe come out of the uptake. This is actually being fed from the steam lines. It's the steam waste pipe. And so this is actually what would have been used to vent steam if the ship didn't need to produce steam anymore from the boilers or what have you. If they had like overpressure or anything like that, they could have vented it out through this pipe. And this pipe goes all the way up to the top, all the way up there, which is where you can see daylight, where we will be able to escape, and ran up the front and back of the funnel. And you've seen them probably in the film where they're just like blowing, steam out because the ship suddenly stopped. So we're now quite high up, right? We've got Scotland Road out there, which means we are on E-deck. So we've come a long way up, but we can just keep going. If we're feeling particularly adventurous and we really want to get out of the ship, we can go all the way up and up and up, past B-deck, C-deck, all the way up here. And just get out. You can see this ladder here leads to a grating at the base of the funnel. So these are called the fiddly grates, and this is a space that was like primarily designed to allow that hot air from all the way back down there in the boiler rooms, to allow all that hot air to rise out of the boiler rooms and ventilate them a little bit. But again, really, really cool space. There's a door alluringly open here, and if we come in here, we're going to see the lower funnel. So this is literally Titanic's lower funnel. This is the base of the funnel where it leads down towards the uptake. So you can see that it's kept in place with these metal plates that are called baffles. And the reason why it's kept away from the bulkheads here, the walls, essentially, and the reason why this door, as you can see right here, is so heavy duty is because this lower funnel would have been unbelievably hot. So, the smoke and the gases would have been running at like 300 plus degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit or freedom units. Sorry, guys. But it would have been really hot. And so really, probably in action, you realistically wouldn't have been able to come in here. It seems very unlikely that you would have been able to just waltz in here because this would have been way too hot. This is not somewhere you want to be. But for maintenance and things like that, really great to have this little space. There are really no photographs of what this area looked like. We've seen the lower funnel from the Britannic, so we know what it looked like. The baffles would have kept it away from the sides of the ship here, these bulkheads, so that it didn't heat up the spaces around it. So you can see it's all about getting fresh air in and trying to cool it as much as possible. But this is a really cool space, and you can still see all the way down there, the bottom of the ship. So it's amazing to think that all these spaces inside the ship are just open, and these empty shafts that drop all the way down to the bottom of the ship, 10 plus stories. It's really cool. The ship is a giant maze. I mean, all of these, compartments and, little hideaways. Would have loved to have been able to walk through this in real life. But Titanic Honor and Glory has done a really good job of giving us the chance to do it. Unfortunately, we can't climb this ladder to get out. You can see the forward part of the funnel there with the steam whistle at the top, and the funnel waste pipe that goes all the way down into the bottom of the ship. So we're going to look at one last kind of secret space. Again, this one I don't think has been photographed pre-sinking, but there is a picture of it from the wreck. Let me show you. If we follow this ladder down, we're going to come to this door, which I want to just pause at for a minute and just look at this view. So you guys should have some kind of understanding where we are right now, right? If we keep going down there, we're going to get down to the boiler room. And if we go all the way up there, we get to the base of the funnel. If we just stand back here a minute, we can see the funnel uptake is to our right. You can see it kind of like rising up through the ship. There is a picture from the wreck, I think again that was taken by James Cameron's team, of this exact view, looking through a door. They just happened to find a door that was open. And it is really eerie to compare the two of them. I'm going to get it up and credit James Cameron and his team, because without this kind of 3D representation, it could be really hard to understand what it is that you're looking at. And again, it wasn't photographed before the ship sank. So this is a really cool little secret hidden area that not many people would have got to see. So how did James Cameron get this photo? Well, he was looking through an ROV, remote operated vehicle, a little submersible, on the other side of this door. Let's go and have a look. That's the door. This is essentially exactly where the ROV was looking inside the boiler uptake casings. But if we look around, we will see a nice big access corridor, essentially, that goes all the way down there towards the engine room. So what is this about? Well, you probably will have read about Scotland Road on the Titanic. That's what this is. It is a really big multi-purpose space, essentially, that kind of cuts right down the middle of the ship and gives a lot of crew members essentially backstage access to get to where they need to be. And it's a really useful thing to have a space like this. And in fact, there are still roads like this on most cruise ships today. Queen Mary 2 has one, and this is where the crew will walk busily to where they need to be. What's really interesting is if we walk along here, we can see that there are stairs leading off that go different places. If we come down here, we'll get down to F deck as the sign promised, and you can see that there's stores and storage and all kinds of stuff. This is where the ship really becomes maze-like, right? Down here, where we're really in the base of the vessel, and there's, storage spaces, white-walled rooms that all kind of look the same. So we go back up to E deck, which is where Scotland Road is, and you can see that we start to get to some really interesting spaces, like the steward's toilet, the steward's levee, or if we come down here, the second-class steward's dormitory. This is where these people who worked day and night to make sure Titanic's passengers were happy and well-fed and lived in luxury, this is where they stayed for their voyage. And it's pretty Spartan. It's pretty basic. But of course, these people were just doing a job and working, and so they lived in pretty austere, basic conditions. This is all this space is. It's just a giant access hallway. But these are some of the spaces on Titanic that haven't really been seen in a lot of photographs or illustrations or anything like that. They're, to me, honestly, some of the most interesting spaces on the ship. James Cameron took some pictures down Scotland Road that look exactly like this. Fortunately, a lot of this space is still intact because it's in the forward half of the ship, away from the breakup zone. And so there's a lot of the space on the ship that looks the same. You can see the pipes that were on the ceiling once have collapsed down to the floor, but it's all still there and recognizable, So there you have it. Those are some of my favorite, lesser known rooms on the Titanic. They haven't been photographed really. They're kind of hard to access. A lot of them are now trapped within the ship and entombed. But that's what they were, and that's what they did. Fortunately, you can go and have a look yourself. If you visit Titanic Honor and Glory's website, check out Demo 401. You won't be disappointed. You can lose hours and hours walking around the ship and looking at everything. Let me know if you would like to do another tour around the Titanic and look at some of the more lesser known rooms and spaces. We've still got the engine rooms, we've still got the turbine room, we've got everything in the second half of the ship that we haven't touched yet. There's the potato room, there was a room called the potato room. There is even a padded cell, which we go and check out next time. As always, I've been your host and friend, Mike Brady. Thank you very much for joining me on this tour of Titanic's lesser known rooms. Let me know where you'd like to go next time in the comments. Stay safe and stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.